All right, welcome. Okay, microphone's working now. All right, so welcome to everybody around the world. And welcome to all my subscribers. So I'm gonna try and make this a quicker video. So I got a lot of verses to read, but this is gonna be some pretty epic stuff for those of you who will be hearing it for the first time. So before I get started, just very quickly get this out of the way. This material, some of it or most of it, you can find in my book, which is available on Amazon. While you're there, if you want, check out my systematic theology. I urge you all to get that as well. This book's only $11. This book's $23. So this 1111 really, but wanted to pick that cool number 1111. So if you're interested in this material, you can find over 150 videos on my channel, on this current channel here. You can watch them for free. If you want to have a little compendium of all the best information with the best concise and compiled and fact-checked information and all that, just get the book, $11. A lot simpler. So what I have today is a nice little presentation here, right? So what I'm going to methodically prove step by step is that God did reveal when the end would come. He didn't tell us the day or the hour, the week, the month, even the season, but he told us the year in which it would come. So, but not only that, he also told us that he wants us to wait for it, which includes, obviously, you have to know when it's going to occur, and you have to know the length of time, how long to wait. And he also commanded us to watch and be ready. So altogether, we have instruction to wait and watch and be ready. And that involves knowing the time period and knowing when it's going to happen. So very quickly, I'll share everybody step by step, but starting off with Daniel 12, where God tells us when the year would be. It's going to be 2024 based on the maths and what is stated. Talk about this in a ton of other videos, so I don't want to waste time talking about that again. But from when the Dome of the Rock, the abomination, was built on the Temple Mount in 688, you go forward the 1260 days, that brings you to 1948, which is the rebirth of Israel. There's 75 final years to take you to the 1335th, which will show that 2023 to 2024 is the final year. That's when the end is going to be. So a lot of people, there's so much to talk about. It's hard for me to try and put things into words right now, but a lot of people, to start with, say you can't know when the end is going to be, and they call me a false prophet and all that. But it's pretty hard to argue with God, right? God's not a false prophet. He told us when the end would be, and he instructed us. He didn't command us, but he instructed us to know it and to wait and to watch and be ready. You can only do that if you know when it's going to happen. And he also revealed in verses information like where if you're not ready, you're going to be caught by surprise. So you see, most Christians, they think nobody can know when it's going to happen. Only fools and charlatans claim to know when. And the verses they quote are from Matthew, from the Gospels, where it appears to say you can't know the day or the hour. But the ironic thing is, sorry, I'm starting to get a bit sick. Can't help it. I want to get this video done before I do get sick. But these chapters are Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 12, right? It's got the few places in the whole Bible where it says you won't know the day or the hour. Now, again, I just want to stress, it says you won't know the day or the hour. It doesn't say week, month, season, year, or anything, right? It just says you won't know the day or the hour. That's all it says. But more importantly is that in these very same chapters, Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 12, you see contradictory evidence, okay? So what they actually say is that, well, if you do wait, watch, and be ready, you won't be caught by surprise like a thief. Is also repeated in Revelation. So what God has revealed to us is that if you know when it's going to happen and you wait for it, you watch, and you're ready, you won't be caught by surprise. But to everybody else who didn't know and wasn't waiting and watching and ready, they'll be caught by surprise, okay? So, yeah, in those same chapters, there are some verses that say you won't know the day or the hour. But you can't ignore the very same chapter's verses that say if you don't wait, watch, and be ready, you'll be caught by surprise. So, what everybody has done for 2 millennia is portray that you can't know when Jesus comes whatsoever. Okay, but that's just simply not true. They say that he comes like a thief in the night, he'll catch you by surprise. No, those verses apply to people who aren't ready, waiting and watching. So that's what I'm about to prove, right? So let me check the time there. 5 minutes. That's ridiculous. But anyways, here we go. So in Daniel 12:12, right? This is where we have the instruction and the knowledge that the end comes at the end of 1335 years. Like I said, that measure is taken from the abomination, the Dome of the Rock, culminates in 2024, right? So it says, this is God speaking to Daniel. Oh, the blessedness of him who is waiting earnestly and has come to the days, which are years, day for year principle, 1,335. And thou go on to the end, and thou dost rest, and dost stand in thy lot at the end of the days. So, like I said before, many times before, this verse actually says that it's called the end of days. So he's talking about the end of days. That term's barely even used in the whole Bible. So God is definitely talking about the end of days. God has definitely told us how much time will transpire between, you know, the first thing that happens, A, and B. So between A and B, there's 1,335 years. Okay? So despite all this and arguing when it was and what the events were, forgetting that argument, the logical thing you can see is that God has told us the amount of time from a point from a point A until the end. He has told us that. And he's given an instruction saying that if you wait earnestly for the 1335th for the end, then you're blessed. So it's very clear that it's an instruction to wait for the dictated length of time to come to an end. Okay? Now, we as Christians know that when the end comes, Jesus comes with the end, right? The resurrection occurs, the judgment, all sorts of other stuff's taking place. Those who are alive will be and who are worthy will be translated, and then we all rise up together. Those who resurrected go up first, and then we go up along with them. There's tons of stuff happening, right? But it's not just the end, right? It's all that stuff happening. Now, anyways, right? So you have to start off with that little cornerstone. God did tell us when it would happen. It's going to be 2024. And that's corroborated by all the other evidence in my book from the other 7 prophecies in the Tanakh. But despite that, so he told us when it's going to be. He gave us an instruction to wait for it, okay, which means you have to know it. You have to wait for it, which involves counting and knowing. You know when it's going to be, okay? Now, let's move on. In Revelation 9:15, this is for all the Christians who say, we wouldn't know the day or the hour. Nobody knows. Not even the angels know. It's just not known. And they keep stressing on that and ignoring all the other evidence to the contrary, right? So in Revelation 9:15, take this one. It says, and loosened were the 4 messengers who had been made ready for the hour, the day, and the month, and the year, that they may kill the third of men. So this verse literally tells you that at this, whatever it was, the 4th or the 5th trumpet or something, right, which is during that final day, the day of destruction, okay, when Jesus has arrived, the great battle and all that stuff's taking place, okay, and it says they've been made ready for the hour, day, month, and year. So who can say that there isn't an appointed day, hour, month, and year? There is. The very hour and day is appointed, not just the year. I'm only here saying that 2024, give or take a little bit of flux, is going to be the year. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to say the day or the hour, but the Bible tells us that there is an appointed day and hour even. Okay, period. Moving on, in Zephaniah 3:8, this is just a little mild verse. This isn't anything earth-shattering, but I wanted to include it. This is, again, an instruction to wait for the arrival of the end. So it says, therefore, wait for me, an affirmation of God, for the day of my rising for prey, for my judgment is to gather nations, to assemble kingdoms, to pour out on them mine indignation, all the heat of mine anger, for by the fire of my jealousy consumed is all the earth. So what was God's instruction here? Is about the end days. He says, therefore, wait for me. Now that makes sense, because in Daniel 12, he said, oh, if you wait for this appointed end period, that I'm telling you when it's going to occur, you're blessed. And here he says, therefore, wait for me. Okay, wait from how? Because he's arriving with the Messiah at the end of days for the judgment day. God will be on the throne. God will be judging everybody and blah, blah, blah. Okay, now in 2 Peter 3:12, we have another instruction to wait for the arrival of the end. Now, people could take these verses that I'm reading now and say that, oh, well, this just generally means just wait in general. You won't know when it's going to be. But remember, that's why I started off with a cornerstone verse, Daniel 12, where it tells us when it will be, and then tells us and instructs us to know and wait for it. So you can't ignore that, right? So, and a little Zephaniah verse there as well, therefore wait for me, right? You can't ignore that aspect and just claim that, oh, it just means generally wait, ambiguously. You know what I mean? No, we've been told when it's going to happen. If God tells you that he's opening a restaurant in 10 days, that means in 10 days, when you go up to the doors, the restaurant will be open. You can go in and eat some food. God's not going to tell you in 10 days and it's going to be in 8 or it's going to be in 12. He said in 10 days. Blessed are you if you wait for the 10th day, then my restaurant's open. You can come have a meal, right? There you go. Boom. What was God telling you? That it's going to open on a certain day. And if you wait for then, you're going to be blessed, right? If you don't wait for it, you come to day 8 and you say, oh, God's never going to open his restaurant, or God might open his restaurant after 20 days. You're not listening to his instruction. He told you when he's going to open the restaurant, after 10 days, right? Remember, this is just a random example I'm using, right? I'm not quoting the verse in any way, right? So remember that logic. Logic is very important, right? But keep that logic in mind, right? So in 2 Peter 3:12, right? Again, an instruction to wait for the arrival of the end. Waiting for the arrival, knowing when it's going to happen, okay? Because we're told when it's going to happen. So Peter says, waiting for and hasting to the presence of the day of God. So you're waiting for that day, not just in general, because you know at least the year it's going to happen in, right? So waiting for and hasting to the presence of the day of God, by which the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and so forth, right? And then it says later, wherefore, beloved, these things waiting for, be diligent, spotless, and unblameable, by him to be found in peace. So like I said, another instruction to wait for the arrival. Now here in Luke 12:36, an instruction to wait for the arrival of the end, once again. It says, and be like to men waiting for their Lord when he shall return out of the wedding feast, that he having come and knocked, immediately they may open to him. Now, if some stranger comes knocking on your door one night to say, hey, you want to come over for dinner at my house? You don't know the person, or one of your neighbors, whatever. In the example, someone, you don't know when he's going to come. He's just going to turn up at random and knock on your door one day. And he's just going to say, hey, you want to come over for dinner? But maybe you're not ready. Maybe you're doing something else, right? That's unexpected, right? But if he's going to come to your door and knock and open up and say, hey, you want to come to dinner with me? And you say, yeah, sure, I'm all ready to go because I was waiting for you. I knew you'd be coming. I didn't know the exact hour or day, but I knew roughly you'd be coming around this time, you know what I mean, roughly speaking. So I got ready. I was waiting and expecting that. And I'm not caught by surprise when he comes knocking on the door. Boom. Okay, yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. That's the difference, right? So when you're not ready, what does that mean? That he having come and knocked, they're not going to immediately open to him because they're not ready. They're going to be like, oh, wait. Let me get ready first. And then, then we can go, right? That's the difference. So anyways, in Titus 2:13, an instruction to wait for the arrival of the end once again. It says, waiting for the blessed hope and manifestation of the glory of our great God and Savior. Of our great God and Savior Jesus Christ, right? So the important thing here is it says waiting for the blessed hope. That goes back to Daniel 12, the cornerstone verse, where it says, oh, the blessedness of him who's waiting earnestly for that end period, right? So the blessed hope is when you're waiting for that appointed period when Jesus and God will return to the earth, right? In 1 Thessalonians 1:10, again, an instruction to wait for the arrival of the end. It says, and to wait for his Son from the heavens, whom he did raise out of the dead, Jesus, who is rescuing us from the anger that is coming. Now, I just want to reiterate, if Daniel 12 didn't tell us when the end would occur and instruct us to know and wait and be blessed for doing so for it, then I wouldn't be able to say right now that, oh, all these instances of telling us to wait for the arrival, you wouldn't be able to claim that there's a time or anything to know about it. It would just be random in general. But because Daniel 12 told us when it would occur and instructed us to know and wait and count for it, then when all these other verses, because Jesus quoted the prophet Daniel. So it's not like Jesus didn't know his Bible. It's not like Jesus didn't know Daniel said these things. Of course, Jesus knew these things, right? So Jesus knew Daniel's prophecy about, oh, wait for the 1335. Jesus knew all that. It's not like, oh, hello, Jesus didn't know that, right? So there you go, right? You got to factor all these things and use logic. But anyways, so when it says waiting for the blessed open manifestation of the glory of our great God and Savior Jesus Christ, there you go. Did I read out 1 Thessalonians 1:10? And to wait for his son from the heavens? Yeah. Whom he did raise out of the dead. Jesus, who is rescuing us from the anger that is coming. Next, in Luke 12:37, right? This one shows us those who are watching for the time of the end will be taken. It says, happy those servants whom the Lord, having come, shall find watching. So this is talking about Jesus arriving. It literally is talking about when Jesus returns to the earth, and the people will be happy if they were watching for his arrival. So let me put it this way. People like to skew this and say, oh, you're trying to make it specific when it's just generally. No, if you have a friend who lives in another country, like Jesus does, right? And your friend calls you up one day and says, hey, I'm going to come and visit you. I'm going to arrive one day at the airport, right? Can you please pick me up in a taxi or something like that, right? Or you just want to drive to the airport. Maybe he's got his own transportation. You just want to drive there to say hi to him before he goes to his hotel or whatever, right? You just want to be a friend and say, hey, when he comes off the plane, right? Either case, doesn't matter. It's this arbitrary example, right? If you're waiting for your friend at the airport, does it make any sense for you to sit there for 2,000 years having no blinking clue when he's coming? Or would it make more sense if, like in Daniel 12, we're told at least a year when he'll be coming in, right? It would make more sense that you would go to the airport and wait when you at least have some rough idea when your friend's arriving. Not just going to sit there twiddling your thumbs like, I don't know when he's coming. No, you're going to sit there and at least know, okay, I know my friend will be coming on this flight at, in this day or something like that, right? That's the important thing, is common sense. So that's why it says, happy those servants whom the Lord having come shall find watching. This is just isn't some loose general statement. You're watching for that plane to come in with your friend on it. You know when his flight's arriving. That's the difference. You're not just sitting there twiddling your thumbs for 2,000 years. You know when the flight's coming in. You may not know the hour, you may not know the day, but you're going to know when the flight's coming in. Okay, maybe the signs will ramp up around then. You'll get even closer to knowing, right? But the point is, he says, happy are those servants who the Lord, having come, will find watching. So they are there watching for him to come in on his flight, so to speak. Jesus will be arriving, just like a flight would be. And if you're there watching, what does it mean? You knew when he would arrive. Which one of us could wait 2,000 years? If it's just a general statement, what human being could sit there and wait for 2,000 years? It's ridiculous, right? So next it says, verily I say to you that he will gird himself, will cause them to recline and meet, and having come near, he will minister to them. So he's pleased that these certain ones will be waiting and watching for him, right? Next in Matthew 25:10, right? It says, it's about only those who are ready for the time of the end will be taken. So what the verse says is, and while they are going away to buy, the bridegroom came, and those ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Okay, hence the picture from my video here. It's about when Jesus arrives, and the people, the Christians, a lot of them aren't ready. They go away to prepare themselves because they're not ready for his arrival. Maybe that's signifying they're not worthy enough yet. They don't have the Holy Spirit because they didn't reform. They didn't do the right thing. Whatever it means, they're not ready, right? They also didn't know that he was coming. I mean, who would know when he's coming and not prepare for it? That'd just be an utter fool. You know what I mean? So these people weren't ready. So they go away to get ready. But when the bridegroom came, those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. And we all know it comes afterwards. The rest of them come up knocking the door. Let us in, let us in. Jesus says, no, no, no. Too late. Not my invention. That's what the Bible says, right? So next in Revelation 3:2, it says an instruction, and this is Matthew 25, right? Which is right there. They didn't have chapter numbers back then when they wrote these things. There were no chapter numbers, Okay, so Matthew 25 is just a continuation of Matthew 24. Matthew 24 is, like I said, in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 12 are the only three places in the whole Bible where it says you can't know the day or the hour when the arrival is going to be, right? The only three places, okay? But yet in Matthew 25, we see that those who aren't ready and waiting and watching, they get turned away for some reason, right? So, like I said, in each of those three chapters, there's evidence contrary to what people have believed that you can't know when it's going to happen. There's evidence that directly shows if you're not ready, waiting, and watching, you could be turned away. Okay, quite the contrary. So in Revelation 3:2, here we see an instruction to watch for the arrival of the end. Jesus says, "Become watching and strengthen the rest of things that are about to die, for I have not found thy works fulfilled before God." In Revelation 16:15, in like fashion, he says, "Lo, I do come as a thief. Happy is he who is watching and keeping his garments, that he may not walk naked and they may see his unseemliness." Right? So he's talking about watching here. It literally is talking about watching when he's arriving. He's not talking about, oh, you're going to be without clothing for 2,000 years. It's talking about when he arrives. And it's also metaphorical. It's not literal, right? But happy is he who is watching. Watching for what? For when his flight comes in, when Jesus arrives. Next, in Revelation 3:3, this is where Jesus says that those who don't watch will be caught by surprise and won't know a day or hour. This is one of the three. Like I said, you got Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 12. Have those few verses that say you don't know the day or the hour. Nobody will, right? But on the flip side, the same chapters say that if you aren't ready, waiting and watching for his arrival, you could be turned away. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right? So in Revelation 3:3, this is what Jesus says. He says, "Remember then how thou hast received and heard, and be keeping and reform. If then thou mayest not watch for what? His arrival." That's what it's talking about. If then thou mayest not watch. Now, how could you, if 2,000 years have gone by, okay, and you believe in your mind erroneously that it just means generally watch for 2,000 years until he eventually comes. If that's what you erroneously think, this is the logic that should show you they don't work like that. Because Jesus is saying he's going to arrive. He's going to arrive suddenly, just once, blam, suddenly. And if you weren't watching for that, you're going to be in trouble. Now, why would Jesus say that? How could we know when he's going to come and be literally watching for 2,000 years? No, it goes back to the simple logic that we are told when he will come. We are at least told the year that he will come, so we can watch for it and not be caught by a 2,000-year surprise. Okay? So Jesus says, "If thou mayest not watch, I will come upon thee as a thief, and thou mayest not know what hour I will come upon thee." So now look, this is your Lord and Savior saying this. And Jesus himself says that if you're not watching, he will come like a thief. That shows you if you are watching, that you won't be caught by surprise as if by a thief. So what the churches have misquoted for 2,000 years is saying that, oh, nobody can know when Jesus returns because he returns like a thief. They're ignoring the actual verses, even in the same chapters from the Gospels and from Jesus here in Revelation, where Jesus says, if you're not watching for my arrival, then you'll be surprised as if I was coming like a thief. Okay, this is showing if you're watching, you won't be caught by surprise because, hey, you know when it's coming, right? If you know what I mean? If God said in 10 days I'm going to open a restaurant, but you weren't paying attention to the message, you walk by 10 days later, on the 10th day, you'll be surprised. Oh, there's a restaurant here all of a sudden, and it's open. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. It was a surprise, right? You're caught by surprise because you didn't know. But those who did know, when God said, hey, I'm going to open a restaurant in 10 days, blessed is he who waits for that opening. And you're sitting there waiting for it. When it opens on the 10th day, you're not caught by surprise. The only difference is with a restaurant, you're not going to be punished for not being ready. With the end days judgment, you will be punished for not being ready. That's the difference, right? So anyways, so don't forget that. That's one of the few important verses that contradict what the churches have been propagating, right? This belief. So Jesus says, if you don't watch, I will come upon you as a thief. That means if you do watch, he will not come upon you as a thief. What does that mean? You won't be caught by surprise. Next, in 1 Thessalonians 5:2, okay, same thing. For yourselves have known thoroughly that the day of the Lord as a thief in the night does so come. For when they may say peace and surety, then sudden destruction, to stand by them, as the travail does her who is with child, and they shall not escape. And ye, brethren, so this is where he's talking to the faithful Christians. He says, and ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day may catch you as a thief. Where are the churches with this verse here? They have never used this verse, because this verse contradicts what they've been teaching, that we can't know when Jesus is coming. Okay, we are told when Jesus is coming, right? And right here it says, it compares the multitudes who aren't aware and who will be caught by surprise, like by a thief. And then he turns and says to the Christians, and ye, brethren, in contrast, are not in darkness, that the day may catch you as a thief. So you got all the churches proudly stating, we won't know when he's coming. Yeah, fine. You're proud that you're in darkness, and you're in slumber, and in daftness, in ignorance, and blindness. That's the reality. And when he does arrive, you'll be caught by surprise. But I didn't know Jesus was coming. That's the problem. And you might think, well, that should matter. But according to the verses, it will matter, because if you're not ready, you'll go knocking on the door and it's too late. Those who are ready, waiting, and watching are the ones who immediately let him in when he comes knocking. That's what all the verses say, right? So, but what Paul says here in Thessalonians is that ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day may catch you as a thief. All ye are sons of light and sons of day. We are not of night nor of darkness. So then we may not sleep as also the others, but watch and be sober. That means that they know when Jesus is returning. They won't be slumbering with doubt and an ambiguity of not knowing. They know when he's going to return. They're of day and of light. Utter contrast to those who have no clue when he's coming and will be caught by surprise like a thief. So you got all the churches proud of being blind and ignorant, and they're going to be caught by surprise. And they're proud of it because they think that's the right way to interpret the verses. Why? Because they've ignored all these other ones. So anyways, Mark 14:37, this ties over to the prayer in Gethsemane, which I talk about a little bit later, right? But I just want to throw this one here, right? Maybe I don't need to read them. I'll read it anyways. But I explain a little bit more a bit later, right? So Mark 14:37, this is about where Jesus goes away to say a prayer. He left the disciples and said, hey, you have to wait here and watch. I'm going to return back to you. So it's an archetype for when he would go away and then return at the end of the days. You have to be waiting. You have to wait, watch, and be ready for his return. But when he returns, they were asleep, so he rebuked them. That's a lesson. It happens 2 or 3 times, right? So I'll talk about it later. So it says, and he cometh and findeth them sleeping. This is when he returned. And he said to Peter, Simon, thou dost sleep. Thou was not able to watch 1 hour. So he rebukes him for not watching. He rebukes him for falling asleep. And we see from those other verses that falling asleep and not watching means you don't know when it's going to happen. You're going to be caught unawares because you have no clue when it's going to happen, right? Now in Luke 12:45, right? Appears to say that if you don't know when Jesus returns, you could be punished. It says, and if that servant may say in his heart, and remember, this is all from the same chapter, Luke 12, right? It says, and if that servant may say in his heart, this is all the churches who say you can't know when Jesus is coming. It says, and if that servant may say in his heart, my Lord does delay to come, which means they don't know when he's coming. They haven't for 2,000 years. They won't for 2,000 more years because they don't know when he's coming. And they just say, my Lord does delay to come. But yet they begin to beat the men servants and the maid servants to eat, to drink, and be drunken. That means going off doing the normal stuff, right? Then the Lord of that servant will come in a day which he does not look for him, and in an hour that he does not know, and will cut him off, and his portion with the unfaithful he will appoint. And that servant, who having known his Lord's will, to know when he arrives, right, obviously, and not having prepared, nor having gone according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. So this verse directly says that if you ain't ready, knowing, waiting, and watching for when Jesus is going to come, we're not talking about the day or the hour, at least the year. If you're not ready, waiting, and watching, having listened to the instruction from Daniel 12 as to when it would occur, then it will catch you by surprise. And if it catches you by surprise because you had no clue when it was going to come, it says that you will be, where is it? Will cut him off, in his portion with the unfaithful he will appoint. And that, I mean, what more important thing is there than Jesus returning to this earth? That's arguably more important than his resurrection. mean, he could resurrect all he wants. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but if he doesn't return at the end of days, that's like the big important thing. All the stuff before that was building up to that, right? If he doesn't do the big important thing at the end of the days, you know what I mean? So if that's the big important thing and you're not ready for that, you could have all the wisdom about his life and death and his life work and all this all you want, but if you're oblivious to when he's coming at the end and you don't know about that, that's the important thing. That's the more important thing, especially if you're living in that last generation, which I should mention as well, right? If you're prior to that, then it's less relevant. But for us who are in this final generation with the imminent end, is very important, is the most important thing, arguably, that we are aware of when it's going to occur so that we won't be caught by surprise, right? And the reason I'm saying all this is because if we say that we have faith in God and Jesus, we knew his word, then we would know when it's going to happen and be ready for it responsibly, okay, so that we're not cut off, right? Saying in our heart, our Lord delays to come, right? You got all the churches that say you don't know when Jesus is coming. You got me saying, oh, it's probably going to be 2024. They'll all say, oh, no, you're a false prophet. In their hearts, they're saying, my Lord delays to come. Delays to come means he hasn't come yet. If your heart is saying that my Lord delays to come, it means you don't know when he's going to come. Because Jesus and God told us when he's going to come, and I have a lot more evidence to get into, right? God and Jesus told us when he's going to return. So if you've ignored that and ignored your Lord's warning, and you're just ignorantly thinking, my Lord delays to come, I don't know when he's coming, that's not a very responsible or faithful servant, is it? You're just being ignorant to the instruction, okay? And you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs for 2,000 years. That's not a noble thing. So that might be why God will cut these people off, because if they were faithful enough, they would have been like, hey, it's clear as day. He's coming at this rough time period. Let's get blinkable ready. You know what I mean? But no, everybody's like, oh, no, you're a false prophet. You don't know when he's coming. Nobody will know when he's coming. Jesus says if you're not watching, then you'll be caught by surprise and not know the day or the hour, which implies that if you are watching, you won't be caught by surprise by the day or the hour. So, anyways, now next, getting into my next fold of evidence, in Matthew 24:32, right? So for all the churches that say we can't know at all when Jesus is returning, this is a little discovery I made the other day. Jesus himself said in Matthew 24, it's in the Gospels, right? I got a separate video on this I did recently, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, right? But Matthew 24:32, Jesus said that when Israel is reborn, which happened in 1948, okay, that the end is imminent. It's obviously the final generation. He said, from the fig tree learn ye the simile, when already its branch may have become tender and the leaves it may put forth, which symbolizes Israel reborn. I got all the verses to prove that in my other video. You know that summer is nigh, so also ye, when ye may see all these, you know that it's nigh at the doors. Okay, so what Jesus revealed here is that when you see Israel reborn, that the end is imminent. Now, he didn't specify a year or anything, but it's at least letting you know he's narrowing down. It's a great clue. But it lines straight up with the prophecy of Daniel from chapter 12 that I started with, because in chapter 12, it pinpoints 1948. Okay, and from 1948, according to chapter 12, there's 75 years afterwards, right? So in reality, and because Jesus quoted from the prophecy of Daniel, like I said before, Jesus knew full well. So what Jesus was revealing there was that when Israel is reborn, you're in the final generation, because even he, having basic arithmetic knowledge, would have known that there'd be 75 final years. Okay? Now next, moving on, in Psalm 90, verse 10, this is a famous verse where it says that God revealed that the reborn Israel, which again is 1948, would exist for between 70 to 80 years until the end in the rapture. So it says, days of our years, in them are 70 years, and if by reason of might 80 years, yet is there enlargement to 80 years, labor and vanity, for it has been cut off hastily, and we fly away. And like I've always argued, it's telling us that it's more than 70, but less than 80. And then it also says that it gets cut off hastily. So where in your logic would be the best place? It would be 75. It's more than 70, less than 80, and it gets cut off. If you're going to make a cut more than 70 and less than 80, where would you make the cut? It's 75. So it's at the 75th year, which corresponds to the 1335th year of Daniel's prophecy, which corresponds to 2024. That's it. That's the end. And we fly away, okay, which would be the rapture. That's from Psalm 90, okay? Now, in Luke 11, verse 7, it says, and he from within answering may say, do not give me trouble. Already the door has been shut. So, and my children with me are in the bed. I'm not able, having risen, to give to thee. This is in reference to what I mentioned earlier. Some of these verses may not be in order. It's just a lot of them, right? But this is the example where the people who weren't ready when he arrived, they got turned away because he came, arrived, very quickly opened the door. Those who are watching ready went in the door because they were ready. Then he shut the door and everybody else is left out. That's why he says, do not give me trouble. Already the door has been shut. In Luke 13:25, and from the time the master of the house may have risen up, may have shut the door, and ye may begin without to stand and to knock at the door, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. And he answering shall say to you, I have not known you whence you are. There's also something very important here. Did I read the immediately let in already? Yeah. Where is it? I feel like I already read it. Yeah. So in Luke 12:36 is where it says, and be like to men waiting for their Lord, when he shall return out of the wedding feast, that he having come and knocked, immediately they may open to him. Right? So that's about being ready for that immediate arrival, the immediacy of it. And let's go back down to where I was here without losing my place. So that goes back to Luke 13:25, where he says, where it may have shut the door, everybody else is outside saying, open, open to us, and he will say, I've not known whence you are. Okay. Now going on in Luke 4:17, okay, this is the only occurrence of the term acceptable year of the Lord. So I looked up the term year of the Lord. This is the only occurrence of the term. Okay, and it's actually quoting Isaiah 61, which is slightly different wording. But for the wording year of the Lord, it only occurs once. This is the one occurrence, right? So this is very important. It's Jesus announcing something. This is a little minor discovery made today, but it's quite important in relation to everything. So it says, and there is given over to him a roll of Isaiah the prophet, and having unfolded the roll, he, Jesus, found the place in it where it's been written, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he did anoint me to proclaim good news to the poor, sent me to heal the broken of heart, to proclaim the captives deliverance, and to the blind receiving of sight, to send away the bruised with deliverance, and to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. So I had a little epiphany. I thought, oh, the acceptable year of the Lord. Could that be a reference to the year that he's arriving in? That's why I did a search. And that's the only place in Scripture where that term occurs, year of the Lord. So I looked up Isaiah 61, which is the chapter where he's actually reading from verbatim. Okay, and this is Isaiah 61. This is the wording from Isaiah 61. So the Spirit of the Lord God is on me. God did anoint me to proclaim tidings to the humble. He sent me to bind the broken of heart, to proclaim the captives liberty, and to bound ones an opening of bands, to proclaim the year of the good pleasure of God, and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all mourners, to appoint to mourners in Zion, to give to them beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, a covering of praise for a spirit of weakness. And he is calling to them trees of righteousness, the planting of God, to be beautified. And they have built the wastes of old, the desolations of the ancients they raise up. And they have renewed waste cities, the desolations of generation and generation. Okay, so this is literally about when Israel is reborn. It says, they have built the wastes of old, the desolations of the ancients they raise up, and they have renewed waste cities, the desolations of generation and generation. It is literally about the rebirth of Israel. So remember, Jesus, when he quoted Isaiah, he said to proclaim that Jesus revealed that he has been sent to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. What does that mean? Which year when Jesus was on earth? No, I think he's talking about the year Jesus returns at the end of days. That's what I was going with. And it's the only term in the Bible, the only place in the Bible where it says year of the Lord. It's quoting Isaiah 61. So here we are reading Isaiah 61. Isaiah 61 is about the Messiah. The same thing. right? And it's about the rebirth to Israel. And we got Jesus, the Messiah, telling us as a sign of the end, the final generation, that when Israel is reborn, that his return is imminent. Isn't that kind of interesting? You get that connection there, right? So Isaiah 61 is about the Messiah, what he would do, and it's about the rebirth of Israel, right? But what the important thing is, it says, proclaim the year of the good pleasure of God and the day of vengeance. That's a reference back to the end of days when he arrives. So here in Isaiah 63, the same term again is used to describe the end days, the Isaiah term. Okay, so this proves that Jesus did reveal the final year. So it says, who is this coming from Edom? I mean, this is a famous verse about Jesus in the Old Testament, right? It says, who is this coming from Edom with dyed garments from Bozrah? This that is honorable in his clothing, traveling in the abundance of his power, aye, speaking in righteousness, mighty to save. Wherefore is thy clothing red, and thy garments as treading in a wine fat? And later, a winepress I have trodden myself, he says, and of the peoples there is none with me, and I tread them in mine anger, and I trample them in my fury. Sprinkled is their strength on my garments, and all my clothing I polluted. From the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed has come. And I look attentively, and there is none helping, and I am astonished that there is none supporting. And gives salvation to me does mine own arm. In my wrath it has supported me, and I tread down peoples in mine anger, and I make them drunk in my fury, and I bring down to earth their strength. So it's about a Messiah, king-like figure arriving in red, bloodstained garments, who's going to tread a winepress. He's coming to dispense the anger and wrath of God, and the people, the sinners of the earth, are drunk from the. That's all the Revelation symbolism. This is clearly about the arrival of Jesus in the end days. Okay, and again, it uses the same terminology of year of. Okay, so in Jesus in the New Testament said it for the Isaiah verse, he called it the acceptable year of the Lord. Okay, and then what Isaiah termed it as was the year of the good pleasure of God. Okay, in chapter 61, and then here in chapter 63, he calls it, where is it? The year of my redeemed. Okay, so we see it all triangulate together here. Also, I missed a verse from Isaiah 61. We're talking about the rebirth of Israel, where it says they've renewed waste cities and all that. In verse 7, it says, instead of your shame and confusion, a second time they sing of their portion. Therefore, in their land, a second time do they take possession. Joy age during is for them. Okay, so that's the rebirth of Israel. There you go. You can't even deny that one. So moving on. So I say, when did Jesus reveal the year? So in Psalm 90, verse 4, if we apply the standard which God provided, where a watch or a day is 1,000 years, it says, for 1,000 years in thine eyes are as yesterday, for it passeth on, yea, watch by night. So here, we all know that a day is like 1,000 years with God, but it also says that it's like a watch. Okay, so we look at the Gethsemane parable, which I go through in my book here, right? Available on Amazon, like I said. In the Gethsemane parable, very, very quickly, we have the story where Jesus, very enigmatically, in 3 times, he's with the people, his disciples, and says, wait, watch for my return. He goes off and says a prayer about his death and the end of days. It's all in the book. It's very interesting. He comes back. It's about dispensing the cup of wrath from God, right? I won't overcomplicate this video and get into all that. But he goes off to say that important prayer, comes back, he returns, which symbolizes him leaving and returning, right? So what we get in the Gethsemane parable is that there are 3 instances where Jesus is with them, but then he departs, says this prayer, and then returns to them. Okay? When he departs and returns to them, this process, this triple cycle is called a watch. Okay? So there are 3 watches that we learn about in the Gethsemane story. Okay? And long story short, this is the symbolism here. Without reading the whole chapter out, this is the symbolism, right? And I also have to mention this because I'm not reading the verses. Each time that he returns to them, they haven't been waiting and watching. They fell asleep. And he rebukes them for not waiting and watching. So the fact that he does this threefold, he's teaching us that we have to be ready, waiting, and watching for his return. Because if we're not, we fall asleep. Why? Because we don't know when he's coming. Right? If you have no clue when he's coming back, you're going to fall asleep because, oh, my Lord delays to come. He doesn't come back and rebuke you. That's the lesson, threefold, given in the Gethsemane parable, right? So what does it correspond to? Well, the first watch, so we're told in Psalm 90 that a watch is 1,000 years. Okay, so we have 3,000 years here. We have 3 millennia. Now, when Jesus died was 26 AD, based on Daniel 9. King Artaxerxes gave the decree to rebuild. 483 years later is 26 AD. That means Jesus was baptized 23 AD. Okay, so from 20, and also there's another prophecy from Isaiah about the double cup of punishment. It pertains to the length of the reign of the disobedient, the length of the reign of the kings over Israel during a period of disobedience, which culminated in the death of Messiah. That period of time multiplied by 2 in exile, and it culminates with the same time periods, right? That's a chapter in my book, a discovery that I made as well, right? There's lots of things that tie into this. It ties into the Revelations, into the book of Revelation, where it talks about the cup of wrath being poured out and all that as well. All that's connected, right? So it's about the end of days. But anyways, it's 3 watches, it's 3,000 years. Jesus was baptized, became appointed as Messiah to go out and start teaching, and started his teachings 23 AD. 1,000 years, 1 watch later would be 123 AD, 1,023 AD. Then 2,000 years later would be 2023 AD, being the final year, which means 2024 is the year. Sorry. I also have to mention, because some people will be wondering, why am I saying 23 and 24? There's the year flux principle, which means that because we don't know if the event occurred in a January, June, or a December, it could all take place in the same year. It could be 12 months apart. Because of that, you have to allow for a 1 year fluctuation, right? So 2023 would be the end, so so to speak, but it could come in 2024 because of that. So, anyways, we have 3,000 years. We have 3 watches. You have from 23 AD to 1023 AD. That's the first watch. From 1023 AD to 2023 AD is the second watch. Okay, then the third 1,000-year period goes from 2023 to 3023. Okay, now I'm just going to read what I got here because it's too confusing. So the first watch, because like I said, it's cycles of him being with the people, departing, then returning, right? That's what these 3 periods are. So the first watch symbolizes his coming is his birth, his incarnation here. His departing is the death on the cross. In the second watch, okay, this is what's the word? This symbolically lines up with in relation to his coming being the return after the resurrection, his departing being the ascension after the resurrection appearance. Okay, and then the third watch corresponds to Jesus' arrival at the start of the 3rd millennium. Okay, and so the coming for this would be the arrival at the end of days, and the departing for this third watch would be the rapture at the end of days, where we all rise up with him and leave the earth. So in Luke 12:38 it says, and if he may come in the second watch, talking about Jesus, and in the third watch he may come and may find it so, meaning the people ready, waiting, and watching. That's literally what it's about. Happy are those servants. So there you go, right? So it's not just a conspiracy that I have, a theory, but the Gethsemane parable is very obvious that it is about that, and it lines up with Luke 12. It says that Jesus may come in the second watch and the third watch. Well, the third watch would be at the end of days. The second watch would be a spiritual or an intangible one in 1023. That would be 1,000 years after his baptism, when he went out on the commission to go out and spread the gospel and the word and all that as Messiah. So like I said, so when did Jesus reveal the year? Well, Jesus revealed the year through the Gethsemane parable. He revealed that he'll be coming on the third watch. Okay, now if we go and read Hosea 6:2, the famous verse, it says, he does revive us after 2 days, after 2,000 years. In the third day, in the third 1,000-year period, he does raise us up and we live before him. So when you consider that famous verse, Okay, and you consider the Gethsemane parable. He's in the end of days return lines up with the return at the third watch. Like I said, so this proves right there within itself when he will arrive. So, like I said, from his baptism, when he became appointed as Messiah to teach, 1,000 years plus 1,000 years is the end. 2023, 2024. Okay, he arrives at the end of days, and the departing will be when the rapture occurs, and we will rise up with him to go on to where our mansions are prepared in the heavens. Okay, but furthermore, in Luke 13:32, Jesus is quoted as saying again, he said to the Pharisees or whoever was arguing with him, he said, having gone, say to this fox, lo, I cast forth demons and perfect cures today. That's the first of the 2,000 years. And tomorrow, that's the second 1,000 years. And in the third day, I am being perfected. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, he's just talking about himself. Well, it's the only place where he uses specific wording like this. All the other ones, it's like very literally, carnally about him. He will rise on the third day himself, right? But here it's different terms. It's not about him rising, it's about him being perfected. So he says today he's perfecting cures, he's healing people, and tomorrow, and on the third day he is being perfected. Okay, Hosea 6:2, he does revive us after 2 days, and the third day he does raise us up and we live before him. Okay, Luke 12:38, and if he may come in the second watch and in the third watch, that's at 2024, he may come, he may find it, so happy are those servants. So that's where Jesus revealed when he will be coming, and it lines up perfectly with Daniel 12, which pinpoints the same time period, and the other various prophecies from the Bible, mostly in the Tanakh, which point to 2023 and 2024 again. I mean, there's too many of them. There's too much evidence, right? But that's my little lineup of verses here for today, but we can clearly see that if you're not ready, you won't get through the door, because when he arrives and knocks on the door and opens the door, you have to immediately go in. If you're not ready, waiting and watching, if you don't know when he's going to come, how could you immediately go in? It's going to be an immediate thing. How could you be ready, waiting and watching if you're not? So you have to be, which within itself shows you that, of course, God did tell us when he's going to return, and he instructed us to know and to wait, watch, and be ready. So what person out there could say we won't know when he'll come when you've just heard all that evidence? So anyways, take care, folks, and God bless.